Are you ready to explore the unknown? Dive into the world of the strange, mysterious, and unexplained with Eerie Expeditions magazine. Each issue is packed with spine-tingling tales, cutting-edge paranormal investigations, and exclusive insights into hauntings, cryptids, UFOs, and more. Whether you're a seasoned investigator or just love a good ghost story, Eerie Expeditions magazine has something for you. Join our growing community of truth seekers and adventure lovers. Subscribe today at EerieExpeditionsMagazine.com and unlock the secrets of the supernatural. Are you ready? That's EerieExpeditionsMagazine.com, where the extraordinary is just a click away. Dare to discover.
What's out there? What creates the shadows in the corners or the creatures of the dark? Who are those on the other side? What do they have to say? This is the Gateway Podcast. This is not your normal style of paranormal talk radio. Brought to you live from United Public Radio Network, 107.7 FM New Orleans.
Welcome to this episode of The Gateway. I'm your host, C.L. Thomas, and we're broadcast live from United Public Radio Network, 107.7 FM New Orleans. How's everyone doing out there? I don't know about you. I'm a little bit drained, and it's only Tuesday. I have a whole week. I got to travel this week, and I'm just really tired. I'm feeling very under the weather, so I might have an extra deep, sexy voice going on. I have a little bit of a head cold, too. So hopefully I can recharge a little bit tonight with you guys and talk about some serious paranormal talk with my guest. I'm going to bring him on in just a second. I have a little bit of news for those waiting on the next issue of Eerie Expeditions magazine. So I know it's running quite late, isn't it? So we decided, I had to regroup with some of the staff that work on the magazine, and we decided to make some changes with it. So it will come back March 1st. And stay tuned, more on that. So probably going to be out the last week of February. I know I've said that before, but again, you know, it comes with having anything new, right? Especially when it's a full-fledged 64-page publication that's coming out. We are working on getting it on the shelves at Barnes & Noble, so it is a big win. And yeah, stay tuned. I'm pretty excited about it. It's going to be hitting the shelves pretty soon. And Vegas news. It's been in the low 60s all week, and it's been just absolutely gorgeous out. So it's around 60s during the day, bright and sunny. The sky is nice, big and blue. Joe Fox says there's a lot of negative energy around for some reason, but it's so beautiful outside here in Las Vegas. It is cold at night, though. It's still dropping down into the 30s. So for those who like to do the hot springs, it's still a good time to go and do that around Las Vegas. So for tonight on The Gateway, my guest, Nathaniel Elwell. He's a paranormal researcher of about 17 years. 17 years in the field. That's a long time, guys. He's the founder of Southeastern Ghost Research Association in Alabama, and he is part of the Newport Paranormal Society in New Hampshire. So he has a lot of experience in researching different topics, and tonight we're going to be talking about the Tulpa phenomena and paranormal investigation. So let me get him on here. Nate, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
I'm just really excited to have you on.
I'm super excited. Once again, you know, we had to reschedule once, but I'm happy to be here now.
Yes, I know. You had some stuff going on. I have a lot of stuff going on as well. It just is what it is, right?
The energy, life happens.
The energy is a little bit strange anyway lately, hasn't it?
It is. It seems to be.
Yeah, it's a lot going on. There's a lot of like static, I guess, in the air. I'm not sure why, but I have to ask. It could be
the full moon coming up.
It could. You know, did you know that it is the year of the moon?
I did not.
So yeah, so the moon is doing. I just read about this. I think every Wiccan out there should know this too. So the moon moves through like phases every 17 years. And this is like the 17th year. So if people out there like to do any kind of candle magic and follow, you know, the moon phases to do anything, this is a great year to do it. And supposedly during this 17 cycle, the moon is like supposed to be really, really close to the earth. So every time we have a full moon, it's supposed to be like big. It's really
and that can cause fluctuations in the energy of the earth as it is, just the moon being closer.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. There's something to it. I ought to have a show just on the moon alone, you know.
Not a bad idea.
To get us started, tell me about you.
I'm not all that interesting, to be honest.
But don't say that. You are very interesting. 17 years.
I've been investigating the paranormal for 17 years. It'll be 18 years as of July 6th. And I have been to a lot of amazing places. I used to live in Alabama. I've been to the Sloss Furnaces in Birmingham, Alabama. I've been to the Castillo de San Marcos in St. Augustine, Florida. I've done the St. Augustine Lighthouse and the Lightkeepers Museum. I've done the Old Bryce Mental Institution in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. I've done the Lizzie Borden House in Massachusetts. I have been all over the place, and I utilize my experience mainly now with running my team, the Newport Paranormal Society. I still, in the background, run the Southeastern Ghost Research Association, but that is currently spearheaded by a friend of mine. But all decisions for that team go through me before they continue forward with anything. And on top of that, I utilize my skill on TikTok. I find paranormal videos, I dissect them, I break them down, and I give people natural, rational explanations to what could be occurring in the video. So people might stop assuming that just because they see it means it's legit. You have to look deeper into it. And I also test paranormal applications on my YouTube channel, which I have a book supposedly coming out this year, if the publication goes right, that is based on my experience testing out these applications.
That's really exciting, Nate. Can I call you Nate? Is that okay?
That's fine.
Tell me about the Sloth Furnace.
So
I've always wanted to
really
go there and haven't made it, even though, all my years in Tennessee, I've never made it there.
Let me tell you, Sloss Furnaces was really cool. And I don't believe they do paranormal investigations anymore. I think they stopped that like 10 years or so ago. But you can still go and do the public tour, and they will tell you the ghost stories and stuff. You have the rumors of Slag, the old violent foreman that got pushed into the furnace from the top catwalk. Sloss is a very interesting place. But me being me, when I go into a location, I go into it with a completely skeptical mindset, because that's how I like to do my investigations. And there was one thing that occurred there. We saw a shadow that I couldn't explain, but pretty much everything else, you're in an old foundry, right? Things are going to be falling from the ceiling. So if you hear a noise, it might not necessarily be a ghost making a noise. It could possibly be just a piece of steel falling from the catwalk. I mean, people, they jump to conclusions so quickly without looking deeper into it for the actual answer. You might not be able to discover the origin of the noise, but you have to chalk it up to, well, it's explainable, but right now it's unknown.
Have you ever come across anything that you could say is paranormal?
Let's see. Yeah. Old Coffee County Jail in Elwell, Alabama. And this is actually one of my favorite stories to tell. So when we went there, it was a jail that shut down and was turned into a haunted house attraction by the local JCs. And whenever they did this, they were getting complaints about a person in the very back of the actual haunted house attraction. They'd come out and say, hey, that person back there was a little bit too scary. I wasn't a fan of it. And the owner of the JCs was actually at the door greeting everyone as they left. And every time he heard that story, he said, there's no actor in that location. There's no one back there. So when people were going through, they were physically seeing this figure. Now, he contacted the Chamber of Commerce. Chamber of Commerce called me, and it was a whole to-do. We had to go to the mayor's office to get approval to be there. We had to sign safety waivers, all other kinds of things. It was a hassle. But when we got there, we did not realize that we scheduled the investigation death on the front steps by an inmate that he had released the prior day. So we get there, and it's got like a bullpen style setup upstairs. There's no actual individual cells upstairs. It's like broken up into bunks. So there's no beds up there. It's an open area now. Downstairs, they had 4 sleeping cells, or what they would call the drunk tanks, that had 4 beds each, one on top of the other, 1 solitary cell. So the solitary cell was what really intrigued me, because we couldn't get the door open. According to the Chamber of Commerce, they had been trying to get the door open for years. They couldn't get it. So we ended up buying a bunch of WD-40 and getting some pretty strong dudes. I think there was like 4 or 5 of us that finally got the door. We forced it open. I go in there and I'm doing audio work. So I have a camera set up to the left side over here, filming the doorway from the side. I had a camera filming into the actual cell itself. Simultaneously, both cameras died, and the cell door that just took 5 of us to open slammed shut on its own volition.
Oh man.
I was stuck in there for an hour.
What was in there?
Literally, it was just a bed. A bed and a small little tiny window.
Did you feel anything while you were in there?
Besides the sudden urge to scream out like a little girl, no. But yeah, really, I didn't really feel anything in there per se. It was just a very weird occurrence. There's no way the wind blew shut a 40-pound door.
That's interesting.
And when I was in, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Oh, what I was going to say was, my thought here was, considering the fact of it being on the anniversary of the sheriff being shot to death on the front steps, what's the plausibility that that door had been closed for so long and we had it open and I was in there and the sheriff, the spirit of the sheriff, walked by and said, hey, why is this door open, and decided to slam it shut?
That's interesting. I don't even know what to say to that.
That was probably my favorite occurrence, next to being at the Ponce de Leon Fountain of Youth Park down in St. Augustine. We were there overnight investigating claims of Native American spirits. And it wasn't anything we physically encountered. It was an EVP that we captured, or what some would call SSP. And oh, I'm sorry, I was reading that. But
yeah,
so
it's long.
we caught audio of what sounded like tom-tom drums in a ceremonial beat that lasted for about 2 minutes.
Oh, wow. Well, I mean, did you catch any of that on any kind of evidence of that kind of stuff?
Yeah, we caught that on EVP.
That's pretty cool.
We didn't hear that at the time it happened.
Oh, I see. I misunderstood you.
Oh, okay. Yeah. No, we didn't actually hear the drumming at the time that it happened. We didn't notice it until we were going over our audio like a week later.
You know, it's interesting that your equipment will pick stuff up like that, but you have no idea it's going on around you at the time.
Well,
that's happened several times to me too.
Realistically, we don't know what kind of frequency that their sound range runs off of. So it could be something like, say, an infrasound where it's so low below our hearing, but maybe the equipment that we use as far as the recorders maybe amplifies it a little bit so we can actually physically hear it.
You know, I just listened to a show. Do you know who Todd Bates is?
I've heard the name.
He does a lot of work. He's a sound engineer. He works with sound and he creates like a lot of like voiceovers, things like that. So he has a lot of time in the studio, and he has like an entire show just on EVPs, and he was just talking about that kind of stuff. How do we create something? How do we know that that's the frequency to communicate with these spirits? So It's not so much like the equipment anymore. It's about trying to tap into what frequency that they can manipulate best to be able to communicate with us. So I thought that was pretty brilliant of him to do that.
No, it's absolutely, it's a great concept for sure.
It is. So we do have a couple questions in here in comments. Tom Barker says, old jails are cool to investigate. Been to Moundsville Penitentiary in Ohio State.
Never been to Moundsville. Ohio State Reformatory is definitely on my list, though.
So, okay, that leads us right into our discussion, though. So we all go to the same places, just about all these famous places like St. Augustine. You just mentioned that. I've been there too. Just, you know, all these places get investigated over and over again. And so the topic tonight, we're discussing Tulpas and the energy. Well, I'm gonna give this to you. What exactly is a Tulpa?
So as I told you earlier, when this topic first came up, I was nervous because out of all my years of doing paranormal research, it's not necessarily a topic I ever really looked into or gave much thought to. But after doing a little bit of research, you know, there's multiple different styles of tulpas, actually. You have your regular tulpa, you have an egregore. Some people claim that a golem is a type of thought form. But basically, what a tulpa is it's a thought form that is created that becomes some form of metaphysical entity based off of the energies that we input into an environment. We're basically self-creating these spirits, so quote unquote spirits. We're creating them ourselves based off of the energies we're inputting into the environment because we want to experience it so bad.
It's an interesting concept because it goes back to just about all religions as well. When you talk about, not to bring religion into it, but Buddhists is where this term actually comes from, and they believe in. I have it written down somewhere.
I'm glad I'm not the only one that has notes.
Yeah, I had to bring notes to this one. It originally, they refer to a being or a thought form created through intense concentration or meditation and visualization of practices, essentially mind-made entities. That's what the Buddhists believe. But then if you take it back to Christianity, where they talk about creation, in the beginning, God breathes he breathes his energy, in a sense, to mankind to make man, whatever God is, by the way, mind you, out there for those people who believe in higher beings, whatever it may be, the creation story. And it's in all religions, right? So
right.
Whatever creation story you have, there's some kind of higher being breathing their energy into whatever it is. So when you take it to paranormal level, we have like voodoo dolls. We have the golem. It's interesting you brought that up because just from the Jewish background, they use golems all the time. The mysticism, Judaism does that as a form of like protection and things like that.
And when it comes to that type, of tulpa, it's something that's known as a summoned tulpa. It's a tulpa that is purposely created with an intent.
That's really interesting. So when we go into all these places, like, how do we decipher if it's not just our energy being left behind? Is it just a collective thought from the entire group expecting a certain thing to come out?
Right. And that's kind of where it gets a little bit, I guess you could say hairy in a way, because an egregore is a thought being that is made by a collective group of people. So a tulpa typically is one singular person, maybe a second, that is imprinting the same energy, but an egregore is a collective group. So if it comes into a haunted location, I would say it's more of that style of a tulpa energy. You take a good example, as we were discussing earlier, you look at the Sally house. You have so many people that go there looking for the spirit of this little girl named Sally, based off of a rumor that had originally started that there was, a spirit there by the name of Sally. And now so many people over the years have went in there calling out to this particular spirit. They're imprinting their energy every single time they do that. And now people do claim to see her. They do claim to capture EVP. There's no telling whether or not now, over the years, if that was a legitimate spirit that was actually there, or if that is just a spirit that we created based off of the fact that we imprinted so much energy into the location that the spirit now manifested.
It is, that comes back to how important it is to actually do the research and history behind these locations that we frequent over and over again, because so much misinformation can start a rumor. Goldfield has an example like this. There's everybody thinks that there was a lady chained to a radiator in the Goldfield Hotel and that she threw a baby into the mine. None of that is real. There is no mine shaft where this could have happened. So, which means no baby. Women were not allowed in the Goldfield Hotel at all. I know there's rumors about prostitutes coming in and out. If you've ever been into the Goldfield Hotel, there is no way they could have chained a woman to a radiator without anybody knowing. It's a pretty big hotel. It would have been heavily populated during that time. It's just, the story is just simply not true. But people claim
I completely forgotten about Radiator Lady.
Yeah, they claim to have, they claim to get in touch with this lady, and it's completely fabricated. The story got created back in the 80s to draw tourists in, so that, how they tell stories. It actually got started by somebody who owned a hotel that was trying to draw traffic to it at the time. So.
Oh yeah, because you see that in a lot of historic places, though. A lot of historic places, they have stories or they have legends that they don't realize may or may not be fabricated. Some of them may be true, some may be fabricated. But if you tell the story so many times in the exact same way, then you're putting that energy out there into the atmosphere. And in a way, you could be creating a thought form. Salem, Massachusetts, good example, one of my favorite places to go. But around Salem, there's like 7 or 8 different or something like that haunted walks that you can go on. Like you got a candlelit one, you got all different kinds, but they tell the same exact stories. They just follow a different path to each location, so they never actually overcross. But you're telling the same exact stories over and over and over again. Don't get me wrong. Salem has, its history. It has its lore. I have no doubt it's probably one of the most haunted cities in the U.S., probably next to Savannah, Georgia. And let me tell you, I don't know if all of it is true, though. I don't know if it's just people imprinting that energy as they walk by the buildings, telling the stories or whatever. Because when I go there, I just feel a sense of peace.
I have to admit though, I've been to Salem quite a few times now, and out of I was a photographer in my past life, my very recent past life. I've taken millions of photos probably for work, and there's 2 photos that came back for me, and both of them were taken in Salem, Massachusetts, and they're 2 out of 5 that I just absolutely cannot explain in my entire lifetime. And both of them are full-fledged shadow figures. And when you invert them, they have like a shape and everything. It's pretty interesting. I'll have to post that somewhere on my social media.
I definitely love to see that. One of my favorite photos that I ever got was at the old burying point in Salem, actually. And I had my daughters with me up here from Florida, and we went over there. They wanted to see Salem, so I took them to go see Salem. And I did not know until I read a book, Haunted Salem, I believe it was, by Sam Baltrusis, that the rumor around the old burying point cemetery was a lady wearing a grayish colored cloak. In one of the photographs that I took, if you look in the background, you can actually see what looks like a lady wearing a grayish, bluish colored cloak.
Oh, that's interesting.
There was nobody dressed like that. And I noticed the picture, which is really weird, because I bought the book while on that same trip. I hadn't even read it yet. I saw the picture and I was showing it to everybody in the car, and they're like, yeah, we can clearly see that. And I'm reading the book on the way home because my ex at the time, she was driving home. So I was reading the book and I'm like, holy crap. And I read that paragraph out loud, and they were like, that's exactly what I'm seeing in that photo.
It'd be interesting to see the photos side by side.
Oh yeah, I can definitely send you the photo. That's no big deal.
Let's get to the comments real quick. There's a lot of them today. Let's see. Victoria says, infrasound plays a huge part in our hauntings, and looking for any kind of questions. I don't see any questions.
I do agree with the infrasound, though. It's an interesting concept, but I do know too much infrasound can make you make you physically ill. Yeah,
it can. Archangel says you can haunt yourself, which, yeah, you definitely can. Victoria says elementals. What do you think of elementals, Nate?
So I think elementals have been around for as long as man can remember. If you think about it realistically, they all have their theories of these beings that live off in the woods, whether it be an elf, and I hate gnomes, so but we'll say gnomes. It's one of the few fears that I have. I don't like gnomes, and but yeah, so elementals could definitely be a form of a spiritual energy, and there's actually something that I have in my notes here and I may not have actually typed that in there, because I was actually ignored it because I was like, that wouldn't make sense to throw in here. But I actually read something about a tulpa that was created in a format of an elemental being. I just don't have the name of it because in my stupidity, I didn't type it
out. That's okay. Do you have any investigations that you've been on that you suspect might have been some form of tulpa?
For me, I think actually I do have one, and it would be Dead Children's Playground in Huntsville, Alabama. So I don't know if you've ever heard of the place or not, but the rumor has it that there used to be a daycare on site at some point back in the 30s, and a teacher kind of went cuckoo and killed a few kids. And supposedly the children haunt the playground that's still on the grounds. You can see the swings moving on their own and stuff. I experienced nothing while I was there, but I can tell you that if all these people are going there and they're calling out to these quote unquote children spirits that are there, and the swings start moving on their own, they may not have felt a slight gust of wind. They might not have noticed it. That could make a swing move. But I would think if there was any place that I've investigated personally that I would say there could be the plausibility of a thought form, it would most likely be a dead children's playground.
Got it. I could think
Because
of
it's
two
all
that
based, because I have never found anything historically about a daycare being on that site, nor have I ever found any records of a death at that site.
No, is that one of those places that a lot of people investigate over and over again?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so it's like an every week thing at that
Oh, yeah.
place.
There's teams around the Huntsville area that go there bi-weekly.
Do you have an idea of where the legend even comes from with the playground?
I other than the rumors and everything that I had read in other forums about why it was haunted, like I said, historically, I don't know where the rumor started, and I couldn't find anything about any building ever being on the site other than a bathroom. So I have no idea where the rumor even got started.
That's interesting.
Thomas, no, sorry.
He's got a gnome waiting for you. I don't know what
Yeah.
that means. That sounds kind of weird.
No, I'll be doing a few events with Thomas this year. That's what that means.
Got it. Well, he's going to put in, you know what, Nate, I kid you not. I used to have a house in Nashville, and back by the barn, I dug up it's a cast iron gnome that we think might be from like the 40s, 50s era, because the house was built like in the 30s. And this thing, I brought it to Vegas with me, but it's not allowed inside because it's really creepy. I swear it moves around and stuff.
It does. It probably
It's very
does.
haunted. It holds a candle. So it has like a little thing to put a candle in it. I'll have to post a photo of that too later.
Oh, great.
It's
So
very
not
old.
only does it move, it can now set fire to things.
Yeah,
I
it
love
can
it.
set fire. So it's one of my interesting pieces. One of the places that I've been to that I think is Tulpa energy is the Bell Witch Cave. And I know you said that's on your bucket list. What are your thoughts on the Bell Witch Cave?
So actually, I have this as an example in here. So there is a thought form that is more known in the realms of witchcraft that's called a servitor. This is basically an entity or thought form that is created with the sole purpose of carrying out the or the task that is assigned by the person who is creating the actual thought form itself. So if you look back in the lore of the Bell Witch and how Mr. Bell was haunted by this entity that he couldn't see, and so many people claimed that it was a witch, whether or not it was historically could have been a property dispute, to be honest. If the person that felt that he wronged them decided to create this energy to attack him, then that would most definitely could have been a way of a thought form in the form of a servitor. I don't know, because there's so much about that story that just doesn't add up as far as the history, the location, and there's, it's really difficult to tell when you have so many discrepancies throughout the years, especially when it comes to the location and the actual site itself.
The site itself is pretty interesting. I did drive up there while I was in Tennessee, and I did stay the night there years ago. And there wasn't, there's like a low vibrational energy to it, but I wouldn't say it was like evil haunted like everyone claims it to be. I did do a lot of research on that after leaving and found that the actual cave is not even on the real property that they would have owned. It's like 10 miles down the road from it. So it's not even connected to the property at all. The John Bell's house, again, is 10 miles down the road, but the story about the Native American skeletons, there's no record of that whatsoever. And then even the story about they brought Andrew Jackson to the house to experience these hauntings. The reason why Andrew Jackson went to the house was because John Bell was running for governor and they were coming up with a political campaign. I found that in the Tennessee archives, the National Archives. So yeah, everything about that story, it's just bits and pieces. So what really happened there? And why do people still experience? Because there's a book there when you first go. There's a cabin that keeps like photos of like orbs and things like that people have taken over the years. And it is pretty interesting. There's like in the book, there's one photo that really caught my eye, and it's of a shadow dog. As plain as day, it's a shadow dog, and it's taken by, it looks like a Polaroid kind of photo. So it is really interesting. Like, is that a tulpa, you think?
I mean, I don't see why it plausibly couldn't be. I don't know of any instances in my knowledge around the Bell Witch hauntings of anything involving a dog. So that would be a very weird thing to capture there. But in all honesty, if you think about it, it's plausible that anything we count this will realistically.
Hey, Nate, are you still with us? You kind of faded out for a second.
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay. So there was an experiment in 1972 called the Philip experiment. And what this was, it was led by a couple of parapsychologists who attempted to create a ghost based on, and we talked a little bit about this before the show. The backstory is they wanted to see if paranormal phenomena was actually based on a collective energy thought. And so they wanted to create a ghost. So through the research, they create this ghost called Philip. And what happens is in their research, they began to get poltergeist-like activity. They've gotten the name Philip several times. The table moved around when they were doing seances to try to bring up Philip. So the theory is this is where, in paranormal world, where the tulpa started initially. So yeah, it's really interesting. So now I think, are we creating ghosts all over in these different locations?
Right. And as far as them imprinting the energy into the location and experiencing all this stuff, I mean, for me, going back through my knowledge of the paranormal, if you go back to Dr. Hans Halser and what he used to say about poltergeist style activity, he said poltergeist style activity wasn't a ghost at all. It was energy that was being input into the environment.
That's pretty interesting. So when it comes to like popular phenomena such as like black-eyed children, the Hat Man is one of them. Bloody Mary, the legend, where you're in the mirror. All of those kind of things.
Pale Creepers, The Rake, Slender Man.
Slender Man, yes.
they're all types of tulpas.
Mm-hmm. So how do we go into a location as a paranormal investigator and collect the information properly without mixing or creating a tulpa?
Right. And that's where the difficulty comes in, because realistically, I don't know if there's even a way around it, to be honest, because once we're there and we're calling out to the spirits, we're already imprinting our energy. We're already putting that out there. So is it even possible for us to repeatedly go into a location, right, and call out to these spirits without the plausibility of creating some type of thought form?
Kimberly says, isn't there another backstory of a black cat showing up as well at the Bell's house? I don't know about that, Kimberly. I think there was... Go ahead.
I will look into it, but I know in the movie, I think it was An American Haunting, there was a scene that had a black cat on the porch, I believe. But that's as far as my knowledge of a black cat being involved, but I could be wrong. I'm not sure.
Why is it always a black cat? Why does the black cat always embody some kind of fear?
I've always wondered that myself. Well, the black cat that lives here, it should definitely give you fear, because that thing is mean.
Is it your cat?
Not my cat. But I have personally seen people walk by it just minding their own business, and she will swat them for no reason.
Oh, whose cat is it?
It's my mother's.
Oh, okay, gotcha. So Victoria says, wouldn't it be better to go into these locations cold, not knowing anything, and see what you can find?
So that is always a great idea. And to be honest with you, that could be, in a way, as I would word it, a preventative maintenance, to where you could kind of, in a way, go away from imprinting the energy of a known entity into the location. If you don't know the history, you don't know who you're calling out for. So in a way, that's really not a bad idea, because me personally, I like to go into a location with very little knowledge and then do all of my research afterwards to see if any evidence that I capture lines up with what is in the history.
I do exactly the same thing. I try to go in a location without knowing anything just to see what I pick up on, and then I'll go back and do the research.
Yeah, but
So,
some of these locations, are so famous you really can't go in cold. Like Waverly Hills, you're not going in there cold.
right.
And everyone knows about the creeper on one of the floors. I think the creeper's a tulpa. Where did it come from? What is it? And the rumor of somebody being scared by a creature that was crawling across the floor spread like wildfire, and all of a sudden now you have people seeing it constantly. So the creeper in Waverly Hills is probably a form of tulpa, but another good example of a house you cannot go to cold. You can't go to the Vliska Axe murder house cold. You can't go to the Lizzie Borden house cold. Everyone knows the histories.
Why do you think these places draw us so much?
So I'm not sure if it's as much the place itself drawing us as it is our own human curiosity. Um, we're curious. What is out there? And so when we go to these locations, some of them don't even have to have massive tragedies. It just could have been something sad that happened there. And it's just a general curiosity, I think, that draws us to it. There are some places where you drive by it and you're just like, yeah, that place is haunted. I've seen a few of those places, and I instantly want to go in. It does. A place like that will draw to you. But as far as the more widely known locations, it's the curiosity of experiencing what everyone else has said they experienced.
Do you think that there's any danger in a topa? Like, say you have a client who has maybe a child, like a teenager or something, that's dealing with a poltergeist, and without a shadow of a doubt that this person may have created this topa. Can it be a dangerous situation?
Well, yeah, I think it absolutely could be, depending on the amount of energy that the tulpa itself may contain. Because if you think about it, poltergeists are known to start spontaneous fires. So that is very much a danger. They can physically manipulate objects, which means they can physically throw objects at you. Spontaneous fires, puddles of water that randomly appear on the floor. You now have a slip hazard if you don't see it. I mean, there's so many different ways that, in a way, a tulpa could absolutely be dangerous if it gets out of control.
Has anybody actually gotten, and I know of one story that I've heard throughout all of this since I've been involved in the paranormal, and it's the story of, if you ever been to Savannah, the Blue Moon, the brewery?
I unfortunately have not been to the Moon River Brewery, but I do know all about it.
So there's a floor, it's the third floor, I believe, that and they were renovating it when I was there. But there's a set of stairs that goes up, and there was a lady that got pushed down the stairs, and I think she broke her back. So that's the only incident that I've heard created by some sort of that, which could be a tulpa, if you think about it, because people have been talking about that forever. Shadows and stuff in that place.
The Moon River Brewery has been known to be haunted, God, since I can remember. And you have an entity that's known to run around the pool tables in there. It's a little tiny guy, like a midget or gnome. No, not gnome.
It's a gnome.
it's about the right height. But yeah. So here's my thing though. What was she actually pushed down the stairs, or did she just misstep on one of the steps and fall? Sometimes when you do that, your back can convulse in a way that it feels like you're being pushed.
That's true. But then at the same time, if you have like an entity that's putting water on the floor and whatever else, I mean, could it potentially hurt somebody?
Oh yeah. I have no doubt that the potential's there.
Okay, so Savannah, I don't know if there was water on the floor or anything like that. But is there any cases like this that you know of?
Not here in the US. But I have heard similar stories Of course, this is just lore and research of the ancient Ram Inn over in England. I have heard that place has pretty much every type of poltergeist activity that you can think of.
And I'm not real familiar with that place, to be honest with you. Like, I know that it exists. I think I've seen, I used to watch that old British show. You know which one I'm talking about. I forget. It had the lady with the blonde hair.
Oh yeah, most haunted.
It was haunted, yeah. And she went in there and they had, I think it was, they had the medium. I think his name was Derek. I'm not sure. And they had someone like sketched a witch or something that's supposed to haunt that place.
Yeah, so there's rumors of a witch, there's rumor of a succubus, there's rumor of an incubi, rumors of poltergeist activity. But, you know, that place is extremely old. We have no idea over the years what kind of energy was input into that location. And that's just basically, you know, using the stone tape theory in a way to kind of reinforce the idea of a tulpa.
So as an investigator, what are the precautions that we should take going into these locations?
For me, the main thing is, you know, one thing that I always do is my team has 2 people on it who are certified in first aid. It's always smart to have someone certified in first aid because you never know what's going to go wrong. As far as being able to protect yourself from an entity that you cannot see, realistically, there's not much you can do. Just you have to bring your A game of the spiritual protection of your choice by your faith.
What about, I know there's like a lot of different energies, like magic, people practice different things. What if you think that somebody sent something like a golem or a voodoo of, you know, zombies are supposed to be something that is supposed to bid, they're supposed to bid whatever the practitioner asks it to do, like an exchange.
Right. Yeah, it's something like the practitioner digs them up, steals their heart, and refuses to return it until they carry out their bidding or something of that nature.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing, to be honest. Yeah, I just don't.
There's so many different directions to go with this topic.
There would
you know?
be.
Did we lose you?
It's pulling at my brain strings, and
I asked you too deep of a question. I'm really sorry.
It's okay. No, it just the question itself threw me off. I wasn't expecting that one.
I know. Sorry. I tend to ask
It's all
strange
good.
questions. But I mean, if you had a client, I've had a client before who thought that a curse was placed on her and she was being attacked through energy, which is kind of like a tulpa. Now that I'm looking at all of this stuff, what do you do about it? What do you as an investigator do to help them?
The only thing I would do for them is I would recommend that they get in contact with a member of the clergy of their own faith. That clergyman comes in, they do a blessing of however that particular religion does blessings. You know, keep any kind of religious protection object around, because if you are put under a curse, realistically, if the curse is actually working, no amount of faith is really going to be able to stop it. And I am a firm believer in curses. So I do believe that they exist. I do believe that people cast them. I do believe that people are just mean and will do that for no reason other out of spite. But realistically, faith, that's about all you can have when it comes to something like that.
So Tom Barker says that he had broken his leg in Gettysburg by being pushed. Tom, were you pushed by an entity? Victoria says that zombie equals Valentine's Day. I stole his heart. I kind of have to agree on that one. I had a few in my day like that too.
Oh yeah, that's true. You could always call someone that you know that deals with spirit removals and stuff like that. I mean, they may be able to help. That's a very good point.
So, I mean, how have you ever tried experimentation with creating these kinds of energy?
I have not, but now that I've done this podcast with you and I've actually done a little bit of research and I have not the greatest understanding still, but a better understanding, I think it's an experiment that's worth trying for sure.
There is one that I really like, and it's, there's an idea that when certain EVPs come through, that it could be your own thought, like you're projecting your own thoughts out there, and that's what's being picked up. I always wanted to have a bunch of people try and just think about like something like pizza to see if the EVP or whatever you're using, the spirit box, would say pizza, just to try it. Like on your next
I've never heard that theory.
Like just to see if it's really, is it us projecting this stuff, or is it really a paranormal entity?
Right. I can tell you this: if the voice recording picks up anything that comes out of my mind, I'm going to be the only one listening to that audio.
Well, what if you can't help it though?
Well, I guess it is what it is.
So Tom Barker says, yes, he felt something push him.
Interesting. So Gettysburg is, once again, it's a place that's on my bucket list. I was going to try and go there in July, but it looks like that's going to fall through and I'm not going to be able to make it. I wanted to go out to the Gettysburg Bash, but I don't think I'm going to be able to make it because I've got an event in Wisconsin the week before, and I've got an event, and I think that one's in Connecticut the week before Wisconsin. So July is just going to be too busy of a month. I'm not going to be able to make it. But in a place like Gettysburg, where you had so many people die, you had so much blood spilled, there's no doubt that that whole town holds energy from the past. And if you just happen to be in the right place at the right time, maybe wearing the right color, maybe an entity there thought that you were part of the enemy group and decided to push you over. I mean, Gettysburg is definitely a very haunted place.
I am going there this summer to that Gettysburg Bash for the first time. I'm really not sure what to expect at it.
Jealous.
But I know what you're talking about. And my last guest from last week, we had some discussions about just battlefields in general and how different of a haunting they are compared to other locations because of so many people dying and because of the stuff that happened there. I actually lived in the front lines of the Battle of Nashville in a house I ended up writing about it. That's what the book Dancing with Demons is about, is my experience in that house.
I have to look into that book. I don't have that in my library yet. I have to look into that.
It's not actually about demons, mind you. It's just what it's called. But I lived on the front line of the Battle of Nashville. The property we lived on, I was always finding like little cannonballs, like the little 4-pounders. I found 3-ringers everywhere. I have buckles. I have part of a saber. All kinds of stuff
awesome
from that battle. But the place was so haunted, and it wasn't just our house. It was all the ones around us as well. So, and then of course there's like the Battle of Franklin. I spent a lot of time in Franklin, Tennessee as well. That's a really haunted place too, if you get a chance to go visit. But yeah, it's just because of those horrible stories that come out of it. You're right. The energy just gets placed there. So what if it's not actually the spirits haunting this place, but what if it's just the energy that's kind of left over from everything?
And that's basically why I worded that the way that I worded it, just given the topic of the conversation that we're having, is because this is going to, when you realize what a tulpa is and how, I'm not going to say easy it is to make one, but how the energy itself can create them. And you have millions of people that go to these battlefields every year and they think, oh my God, it's got to be haunted, specifically because all the people that died here or the atrocities that took place here, right? You have all those people imprinting that energy. So are we really experiencing ghosts when we visit those types of places, or are we experiencing the energies that have been put into the environment by all of the people visiting having those thoughts?
It's an interesting question, isn't it? Tom Barker mentions Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum in Hillview Manor. Those are also two places. Yes, lunatic asylums are right up there. And the most haunted places that I've been to are hospitals, churches, everywhere that has like high emotional things going on. So it kind of makes sense.
It does, because it's like when you look at it as a whole, you have all of these people that claim that they have like haunted dolls, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what a spirit that is, or spirit containing within that vessel, a spirit at all, or is that the energy of the person who owned that particular object and showed it so much love? And if you think about it, it's like from being a little kid, some little kids create tulpas and don't even realize it. Because technically, would an imaginary friend not be a tulpa?
Well, what's your thoughts on Robert the Doll?
Robert the Doll is ugly. That's my thoughts.
That's it, huh?
No, if I ever go down to Key West, I definitely want to test the theory of taking his picture without permission. I would be willing to risk doing it.
I've definitely done it. I spent some time with Robert during Hurricane Dorian, of all things.
Nice.
I got to go in, because the island, they evacuated it, so I got to go in because there was still the lady that worked there. She let me in. I had a camera. I was the only one in there, and I was taking pictures with Robert the Doll and the whole deal.
Yeah, but did you ask his permission?
I didn't really ask for his permission, but
Did he?
at the time, I felt like the doll really wasn't haunted. It was more the building that he's in. It's an old military fort.
Right.
So, I don't know.
Yeah, because that's the museum down in Key West, Florida, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah, so it used to be, it was an old military fort.
And I guess the story is it was a bunch of younger people, like young kids that were in the Civil War. They sent them there because they knew that they wouldn't be in battle necessarily, and they weren't. But the thing is that a lot of them ended up dying of malaria while they were there. Yeah.
That's a horrible way to go.
So that's the story with that place. But
and the story behind Robert the Doll is just interesting anyway, because Robert Eugene Otto was such a unique kind of person. The how long he held on to that doll for is just insane to me. So was the doll actually haunted to begin with? Maybe not. Maybe the doll was just an innocent doll that he just happened to be given. And over time, he created this being within the doll that manifested itself into what we know now.
Or maybe Robert didn't do it, but the people that visit the doll.
Perhaps.
Like other investigators and stuff.
Oh yeah, and that's a very good plausibility as well, because he has that lore about him. And once again, when we go back to talking about constantly the lore, because that is what makes the tulpas happen, is you go in with all these lores and you're imprinting the energy every time that someone visits that place and they talk about the lore behind it. The lore grows stronger with every visitation.
Well, Nate, we are at the bottom of the hour, and man, we can go on a lot longer on this topic. What do you have coming up, and where can people find you?
I'm actually glad I wrote that down earlier. So I've actually got quite a few other podcasts. I've got one more on Thursday, and then I'm actually clean for the rest of March, which is weird. And I've got, I think, 8 booked next month already. In May, the 17th and 18th, I'm going to try. I cannot have a guarantee. I'm going to try to get down to Penhurst Paracon. Can't guarantee I'm going to make it yet because Penhurst has been on my list. But July 13th and the 12th, I'll be at the Connecticut Paranormal Convention and True Crime Conference as a guest lecturer. July 18th.
What are you lecturing on?
I'm going to be lecturing on how to properly break down and dissect paranormal videos, so this way people who are just getting into the field know what to look for when they're seeing these videos online. So this way they're not fooled.
Gotcha. Is there any like famous videos that you've taken apart like that?
Oh, there is. One of my favorite ones was the child who stood on the crib rail.
With at the Warrens?
No. I'll download the video and I'll send it to you. It's very hard to describe it, but basically there's a child that stands up on a crib rail, stands there for a few seconds, and then falls backwards as though he had some kind of miraculous bout of extremely good balance. It's a weird video, but it took me a little bit, and it's probably the most famous video I've ever done. It was on multiple TV shows, in multiple magazines. It's been all over multiple YouTube top 10 videos for the scariest videos ever. So that one was really fun.
I'll have to look for that.
And then let's see, July 18th and 19th, I'll be in Wisconsin at Broadhead Manor for the Paranormal Rockdown event.
Okay.
September 6th and 7th, I'll be in Maine for the Maine Paranormal and Horror Convention. So yeah, I've got a lot going on this year.
Well, we will definitely look out for you, and thank you so much for being on the show.
No, I appreciate you having me. It was a great conversation. Thank you.
Thank you. You've been listening to The Gateway, your portal to the unexplained, mystical, and the otherworldly, broadcast live from United Public Radio Network 107.7 FM, New Orleans. Thank you guys for listening. And next week, let's see. Next week, I do have a guest for next week. We are going to talk about, since it's, well, it'll be after Valentine's Day, but it's close enough, right? We're going to talk about haunted love. So stay tuned for next week, 6 p.m. Pacific. Until next time, thank you all.